Hey everybody, welcome back to 8 days of Vegas tips and tricks. And this will be day 7? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Day 7 of 8. I'm getting a little groggy with all this video making and stuff, so I kind of lost track. Hey, there's no flashy edits today. There's no field trip today. This one is strictly for Vegas nerds, and maybe it's strictly for Vegas tips and tricks nerds, which I guess means some of my close friends on here. But I got to thinking the other day that I needed to sort of update some of the stats that I've kept on my mini 46 trips to Las Vegas. And so I figured if I did that, I could use those stats and that information to amuse and amaze some of you, at least, about my Vegas misadventures. So again, we'll start at sort of the broad outlines. I first arrived in Las Vegas the night of April the 12th, 1996, just over 25 years ago. That makes it my silver Vegas wedding anniversary. There you go. By the way, if they're watching, happy 15th wedding anniversary to Andy and Simone, who celebrated their special day yesterday as you watch this, today as I'm recording this. So definitely, I'm going to put a link to their channel in the show notes below. They are closing in quickly on 1,000 and about to go to Vegas again, so you definitely want to check them out. All right, that's my plug for the day. I have taken 46 trips to Las Vegas. You could say 47, because on my first trip, I had a 10-hour layover back in Vegas before I was able to come home. I flew from the trip I flew from Kansas City to Las Vegas, and then from Las Vegas to Reno, from Reno to San Francisco, where I was there for a week, and then from San Francisco to Las Vegas, and there is where I ended up with a 10-hour layover. I ended up renting a room that might as well have been a room by the hour, because it was the old Downtowner motel, which they've actually spruced up in recent years. It'd be fun to revisit that place someday. But so it just gave me kind of a place to stash my bags, and I wandered around Fremont Street. But I count that as the same trip. So if we don't count that, if we count that as the same trip, then I've been there 46 times. You might ask, what's the times that you've visited? Have you visited Las Vegas in all the different months, different times of the year? And the answer is kind of. So let me go through this exhaustive list. I'm even going to, this is all the work that I went through to compile this information, but I'm not going to use all of it. So it turns out I had been to Las Vegas in 9 out of the 12 calendar months. And that number would almost certainly be 12 out of 12, if not for my employment, which, as many of you know, is in the retail business. August is a very, very big time of year, particularly in our store, because this is a college town and it is a big back-to-college season. So typically, you don't get time off requests in August unless it's some kind of an emergency. And obviously in November and December, you're in the holiday period. So once again, you don't typically get time off requests. So I've been to Las Vegas in 9 out of 12 months, but again, someday after I retire, I will rectify that and make sure that I get there in August, November, and December as well. The earliest day I have ever been in Las Vegas on the calendar year is January the 12th. And let me check. Only one time I was there that early on one of my trips. The latest date I have ever been in Las Vegas is October the 24th, which I think also is probably, I've only been there that late one time. So that's the range of dates. Looking at the different trips, again, there have been 46 trips. 9 of those have been in the month of January, 4 in the month of February, 3 in March, 8 in April, 7 in May, 2 in June, 5 in July, I must be insane, Obviously 0 in August, 5 in September, 4 in October, and then November, December also none. But I wanted to go in a little more detail and figure out the exact different days that I had been in Vegas and how much overlap there was, and how many of the days in the calendar year I had actually spent at least part of in Las Vegas. Now, I counted my departure days on these, so I may have gotten up at 6 in the morning and flown out by 8 o'clock, but I was still there during part of that day, so that was the logic there. It turned out, to give out the overall number, I've been in Las Vegas 143 out of the possible 366 days that you could be there. I say 366 because you could be there on February 29th. Which is 39.1% of all the available days in the year. Now, if I take out those 3 restricted months that I've not been able to take time off, that puts us at 143 out of 274, and that's 52.2% of those days. Now, if you quickly do computation in your head, you might note that the number of visits that I mentioned actually added up to 47. And that's because there was one, and surprisingly only one time, that my trip overlapped 2 different months. That was a trip that I took that started on June 29th and ended on July the 5th. So if you add up all those numbers, it's 47, but it's actually 46. So we'll run through these real quick because I know you really want to hear all this. But January, I have a streak there, which I think might be the longest streak. I have been in January on at least one occasion between January the 12th and January the 28th. So 17 days out of a possible 31, 54.8%. I warned you this was for nerds. It does get a little more interesting as we go along. February, the 11th through the 16th and the 20th through the 27th. So 14 days. I took it out of 29. That's 48.3%. March, I have a streak from the 17th through the 27th. Curiously enough, nothing in early March. That's 11 days out of the month, 35.5%. April, one of the big months, 22 days out of that month. The 1st through the 16th, continuously, and then the 25th through the 30th. So if I ever do a trip from the 17th to the 24th, I will have knocked out the entire month of April. So maybe I'll shoot for that sometime in the next few years. So 22 out of 30 days, 73.3% of the days in April I have been in Las Vegas. May, also a big month, 19 days out of 31, from the 4th to the 16th, and from the 18th through the 23rd. 19 days out of 31 is 61.3%. That's the 3rd highest number. June, I've actually only visited twice during the month of June. I mentioned one. The other one was in early June, the 7th through the 12th and the 29th through the 30th, so only 8 days out of 30, 26.7%. July, another big month. For some reason, it's really hot, but for some reason, I feel the need to go. 22 days out of the 31 days in July I have visited, the 1st through the 5th, and then another 17-day stretch of the 10th through the 26th. So again, not too many days would need to be knocked off for me to hit all the days in the month of July. That is 71%. Nothing in August, as we mentioned. September, 16 days out of the 30 days in September, 53.3%. I've been there from the 3rd to the 10th and the 15th through the 22nd. And finally, October, 14 days out of the 31 possible days. Been there from the 4th to the 8th and the 16th through the 24th. That is 45%. I did mention there was one trip that overlapped 2 months. What's the most popular date that I've been in Las Vegas? Well, curiously enough, it's in the month of January. I have been in Las Vegas on January the 21st 6 times. There's actually a number of placed dates that I've been there 5 times. You know, I look at this, and actually the 21st and the 17th of January, I have been there 6 times. And there's also 3 or 4 other dates in January that I have been there 5 times. So there you go. Well, that's kind of cool, I guess, but you're probably curious about where I've stayed on these trips. In the broad outline, I think one of the interesting things I could tell you is that I've had more trips where I've spent at least one night off the strip as any other. So actually, there are more trips that have been off strip than on strip or downtown. That makes any sense. So, and there's a lot of my trips early on, I should say middle on, from sort of the mid 2000s, from about 2005 to 2015. That's probably where the majority of my stays were. So let's go through the top hotels, the number of stays and the number of nights real quick here. The place I have stayed the most times is the Orleans. I've stayed at the Orleans 16 times, almost always for like just a couple of days, but that adds up to 35 nights. You're probably going to wonder how many total nights there are, and you know what? I didn't add that up. So we'll look into that and we'll update you at some point on that number, but it's well into the 200s. Secondly, was 7 times that I've stayed there. Again, another Boyd property. 7 stays, 19 nights, the Gold Coast. There you go. Another off-strip property. I haven't stayed there in almost 10 years, but the Rio. I stayed at the Rio 5 times, total of 16 nights, including a stretch of 6 nights for my 50th birthday back in 2013. That would be the longest stretch if it wasn't interrupted by spending one night at the Cosmo in the center of that trip. Also, a place I've stayed 5 times is the Plaza downtown. But again, these have tended to be short trips. I've stayed there 5 times, 11 total nights. Now you get into smaller numbers. The first hotel we're going to talk about that's no longer there, I stayed at the Hard Rock 4 different times, also a total of 11 nights. So it's one of the few properties I've stayed at double-digit nights. Of course, it's now Virgin Hotels, but when it was Hard Rock, I stayed there 4 times. I have also stayed at the Wynn now 4 times for a total of 8 nights. So that's kind of surprising. The Wynn actually, I guess you'd say 6th. Would never thought that a upscale property would have that distinction. Now you get to the places I've stayed 3 nights. One of them, the Fremont downtown. I've stayed there 3 times, but one January I stayed there for 6 nights straight. So the place is a little run down. It wasn't that bad, 7, 8 years ago, but lately it seems like it's really in rough shape. So that's the longest time in one hotel, 6 nights. But a total of 3 trips there, 12 nights. Also visited the Riviera 3 times. That obviously also no longer exists. 9 nights. The Flamingo I've stayed at 3 times for 7 nights, and a number of properties I've stayed at twice. The one I mentioned was the Sahara, the original Sahara. Stayed there 2 times, 10 nights. How many properties have I actually total stayed at? I think I figured out was 9 different places downtown. Strat 10, Sahara 11, SLS 12, Las Vegas Hilton 13, Riviera 14, Stardust 15, Wynn 16, Treasure Island 17, Mirage 18, Caesars Palace 19, Harrah's Mix 20, Link 21, Flamingo 22, 2 different versions of what is now Cromwell, that's 24, Bellagio 25, Bally's 26, 27, 28, Planet Hollywood, once when it was Aladdin 29, Cosmo 30, Aria 31, you got to go to Luxor 32, Delano 33, then you go off strip with Hard Rock 34, Palace 35, Rio 36, Palms 37, Gold Coast 38, and Orleans 39. And I think that's going to wrap it up. So I think I've stayed at 39 properties. If you want to count the downtowner for 8 hours, that would make 40. So there you go. We're going to wrap this up because nobody needs to watch any more of this. But thank you so much. We'll be back with the final day of 8 Days of Vegas Tips and Tricks tomorrow. Until then, I hope you have a great and lucky evening. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.